everyone, it's Chris and I'm part of the Fabella team. I'm here to demonstrate to you several of the advanced nodes that you are most likely to use in your projects. You can access the advanced nodes by right-clicking anywhere in the workspace, going to Insert Node, and coming over here to Advanced. You can also find them by going up here and hovering over Advanced. So to demonstrate the various types of advanced nodes you're likely to be using in your project, I've created several example groups here. So the first one is the roll dice node. So the roll dice node simulates rolling a dice. So you give it the quantity of dice you would like to roll, the number of sides each dice has, and how many dice you would like to keep. So for this example, I'm rolling a single 6-sided die and capturing the result in a variable called roll result, which I then say out in the next say node here. So if I go ahead and run that,
you rolled a 2.
I rolled a 2. If I roll that again,
you rolled a 4.
So that's a basic explanation for the roll dice node. If we move on to the modify state node, the modify state node is pretty basic. You can initialize new variables with it, or you can update existing variables. So in this example, I asked the user if they're rich or poor. And that's connected to two modify state nodes. Rich goes to this one, which sets the value of gold to 100. And the poor branch goes to this modify state node and sets the value of gold to 10. And here, I just write out the value of the gold variable. So if we run that, state.
Are you rich or poor?
I'm rich.
You have 100 gold. Are you rich or poor?
And if I click poor this time,
you have 10 gold.
And that's how the modify state node works. So building upon that, if we come to the clear node, it's the same setup as before, rich or poor, but then you see that I have a clear node after it. So what the clear node does is that it will clear the value of all of the states, not just the gold state. For example, say I had 2 or 3 more pieces of state. Those would all get cleared as well. So this essentially resets all of the data in your project. So let me demonstrate by running this project.
Are you rich or poor?
I'm poor.
You have 10 gold. You have false gold.
So where it said I had 10 gold, that was this node. And then I jumped to the clear node, which cleared the state. And where it said I had false gold, that was this say node. And the reason it said false was because the variable didn't exist. So keep that in mind. So jumping further down to the condition node. So we start out with the same setup, are you rich or poor? And then we have a condition here. We take a look at this. So we look at the gold variable. We're checking if the value is greater than 10. And you can see how that resolves into an expression. So gold greater than 10. And if that evaluates to true, we'll end up here, you are rich, or here, you are poor. So let's run that and see how it works.
Are you rich or poor?
Rich.
You have 100 gold. You are rich.
Let's see what happens if we choose poor.
Are you rich or poor? You have 10 gold. You are poor.
So you can see how powerful this can be for creating branches within your story flow. So then we come down here to the loot in random node. So here's the basic setup. We begin with initializing a new variable called gold and setting its value to 0. We initialize a new variable called to loot and set it to 3. And here, we write out there are 2 loot chests to loot. And this will be set to 3. So we're defining an amount of chests that we need to loot. Of course, we could just lay out a lot of nodes and manually set 3 chests, but if you want to have 5 chests or 10 chests that you want to loot, you don't want to have to set up that same structure of nodes for every individual chest. That's where the loop node comes in. So we have an index. This is our iteration. We set it to 1 to start, and for each iteration, we increment its value by 1. And to exit the loop, we'll just check if the index has reached the toLoot variable value, which is 3 in this case. So we should loot 3 chests. The exit output here is triggered when this condition is met. So let's take a look at what happens within the loop itself. We come up here to the random number node. This is pretty basic, actually. You define a variable, you set its min value and its max value, and it'll generate a random number within that range. So I create a variable called looted gold, and in the say node, I write out that value as well as the current iteration of the loop. You find X amount of gold in chest index, which would be the iteration. And then in this modify state node, we set the value of gold equal to itself plus the amount of gold that we found in that chest. And we do that 3 times, exit the loop node, end up here, write out the total amount of gold that we found in all of the chests, and end the flow. So let's try it in practice.
There are 3 chests to loot. You find 9 gold in chest 1. You find 3 gold in chest 2. You find 9 gold in chest 3. You found a total of 21 gold in the chests.
And that's it, really. If I wanted to add more chests, all I would have to do is come into here and update the value to whatever I want. You could loot 100 chests if you want. So the next node to look at is the HTTP request node. This node allows you to get data from an external server, like an API or any kind of web service. In this case, I'm making a GET request to the JSON placeholder API, and I'm saving the response in a variable called response. Then, I simply write out the response variables in a say node like this. Take care that you know the structure of the data you're expecting from your service. So I know that our response has a name, and I know that our response has an address object that contains a city. And then I have a random number node that just gets a random person ID between 1 and 10. And then I plug that into the URL in my request here. So let's see what we get.
The person's name is Irvin Howell, and they live in Wizzikiburg.
Let's try one more time.
The person's name is Chelsea Dietrich, and they live in Roscoe.
And that's how you can request and use data from other services within your Fabella projects. Now for the last example, we'll take a look at scripting in Fabella. So there are 2 types of script nodes. There's the global script node and the script node. What the global script node does is that any code will actually be added to the top of a normal script node. So any functions, any variables, any data structures that you write in a global script will be accessible in all of the normal script nodes. So in this global script node, I've defined an array of people with 3 objects, each one containing different values. And I've created a function here which takes an ID and returns the person in this array with the ID matching the argument given here. So if I open up the script node here, you can see that I set a piece of state called person, and I set that equal to state.result. And that comes from this random number node, which defines a variable called result and sets it to a value of between 1 and 3. You can see that I only have 3 people here, but I could add more and I could set this maximum value higher. And then the say node here will simply write out the result that it finds. So let's see it in practice.
The person's name is Bob, and they are 45 years old.
Hi, Bob.
The person's name is John, and they are 33 years old.
So you can imagine how powerful scripting would be in your Fabella projects. So I hope you've achieved a good understanding of how the more advanced nodes in Fabella works. You can always refer back to the technical documentation if you need to refresh yourself on the functionality of each of these nodes. Thanks so much for listening.